So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths. In this video we'll be going over the GCSE AQA past paper of June 22 Higher Paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper. Now as always I'll include a question breakdown in the description below along with many other things so you can see which question refers to which topic. So let's get straight into this GCSE paper of 2022 Paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper. So looking at question 1, it says which of these equations is a straight line. So we're looking for a single x and a single y, where x, if it's a fraction, x is not in the denominator. So it's definitely not going to be the first option. It's definitely not going to be the second one. It's not going to be the fourth one because x is our denominator. So the correct answer is going to be our second option. Question 2, it says what is 0.28 as a fraction of 0.8. So for this, if we write this as a fraction using those decimals, and then we multiply both numbers so that by the same number so that both numbers are whole numbers. So if I multiply both numbers by 100, I get 28. Let me just correct that. So if I multiply it by 100, I get 28 over 80, and then simplify that fraction by dividing by 4, and I get 7 over 20, which is my first option. Then for question 3, it says circle the calculation that increases 240 by 7.5%. So remember, you always start with 100%. Increase means I'm adding, and I'm adding 7.5%. So that added together is 107.5%. Then that as a decimal is 1.075, and that's what I'm multiplying by. So the correct answer is going to be my third answer. Then moving on to question 4, it says circle the reason why the triangles are congruent. So as you can see, what we've got is we've got a 90-degree angle, we've got a side, and we've got a side. Now typically most students will probably go for SAS, and they wouldn't be wrong in that, but because right-hand side triangle is on there, it's actually going to be this one here. So it's really important that you do look out for that right angle triangle, because if it's a right angle triangle, yes, if that wasn't an option, I would have gone for SAS, but as it is, I'm going to go for this one as the correct answer. Then moving on to question 5, there's a couple of ways in which you could do this. So here we've got 80 million, so if I just write down all of those, remembering to include the correct number of zeros, over 200, then I cancel the zeros, so I'm left with 800,000 divided by 2, which is 400,000. And that in standard form is going to be 4 times 10 to the power of 5. Alternatively, what I could have done is written each of these numbers as in standard form. So that's going to be 8 times 10 to the power of 7. And that's divided by 2 times 10 to the power of 2. Then I write that as 8 over 8 times 10 to the power of 7 and 2 times 10 to the power of 2. Well, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I take away the powers, in which I get the same answer. So any of those two methods would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 6a, it says work out 3 to the power of 12 divided by 3 to the power of 7. So when we're dividing, we take away the powers, so that's going to be 3 to the power of 5. So I then need to work out what 3 to the power of 5 is as a whole number. Well, that's going to be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Well, 3 cubed is 27, and that's 9, so I'm going to do 27 times 9, and if I just do that, so 7 times 6 is going to give me 63, and 9 times 2 is 18, plus 6 gives me 24, so it's going to be 243. Then working with B, then simplify. Now with this, what we need to try and do is we can write 8 as a power of 2. So 8 is 2 to the power of 3. So then if I swap the 8 with 2 to the power of 3, I get 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 6 times 2 to the power of 4. And then when I'm multiplying, I add the powers. So 3 plus 6 is 9, plus 4 is 13. So the answer then is going to be 2 to the power of 13. Moving on to question 7, it says in a group of 98 students, 25 study both art and French, 10 study art but not French, and 71 study French. And it says we've got this diagram here. So the question is asking us to make 2 criticisms of the diagram. So there's a couple of things we need to look out for. The fact that basically none of the circles are labelled, so there is no labelling of the Venns. And the next one, we can then assume that that 25 study both, 10 study art. So I'm guessing that this one is going to be art and French. And then it's just a case just recognizing out the two. So do we have 71? Yeah, that's right. So the numbers seem to match up. So let's have a look to see if they all add up to 98. So I've got 10 plus 25 plus 16 plus 48. So that's going to be 11. And plus 9 is 9. So definitely going to go wrong here. So 4, 8, and so that's should be 9, so it should be 99. So I'm guessing that that's the other error in the fact that all of those numbers don't add up to 98. So not all, or should I say, all numbers don't add up to. Total does not add up to 98. Moving on to question 8, it says in a week Samir is paid a basic hour rate of for the first 30 hours worked, and then overtime for the additional hours. The graph shows his pay working up to 40 hours per week, and the question is asking us work out the ratio of the basic hour to overtime hourly rate and give your answer in its simplest form. So for this, what we need to do is work out the gradients of each of those particular points. So the basic rate, in other words, the gradient, is going to be 450 over 30, which is £15. So it's going to get, so basically it's paid £15 per hour. And the overtime rate, and the gradient, is going to be, so looking at this, it's 700 to 450, so that's going to be 250, and that's divided by 10 hours, so that's going to give me 25. And so just making sure that the ratio is what we're wanting, so basic to overtime, so it's going to be basic to overtime is going to be 15 to 25. And we can simplify that by dividing both numbers by 5, and I get an answer of 3 to 5. Then moving on to question 9, it says in each box write a fraction less than 1 to make the correct calculation. So here I need two numbers that multiply together give me 3, so I'm going to go for 3 and 1. And two numbers multiplied together give me 10, but we've got to remember that the fractions of both got to be less than 1, so that's going to be absolutely fine. So we're looking for two proper fractions. Again, there are multiple other options you can have as well. For the next one, it says in each box write a decimal less than 1 to make the correct calculation. So let's go for 0.3 and 0.2. So another combination I could add is 0.6 and 0.1 would have been absolutely fine as well. Moving on to question 10, it says use a ruler and a compass in this question, and it says a tree is planted in the garden. The tree is to be in the region that is closer to A and B, AB than BC. Label the region R where the tree can be planted. So for this, what we need to do is look at the common letter, which is B. I'll set my pin there, and then what you're then going to do is you're going to draw an arc using your compass. It doesn't matter how the measurements are. Then at this point here, without adjusting the compass, you're then going to make another arc and then put in the pin there, and you should end up with something that looks like that. And then what you then want to do is draw a line through that intersection point, and the question is wanting it to be closer on this side, so it's got to be this region here, so it's going to be on the top part of that line. Moving on to question 11, it says here are two shapes P and Q, and P is 3/4 of a circle with radius of 20, and Q is 1/3 of a circle with radius of 15, and it says how many times bigger is area P than area Q. So looking at area P, Well, the formula for this is, well, the area of a sector is theta over 360 multiplied by pi r squared. So area P is going to be 3/4, because that's the proportion of the circle, multiplied by pi multiplied by 20 squared. So what this then becomes is 3/4 times pi times 400, which then becomes 1200 pi over 4, which then becomes 300 pi. Then if I work out with area Q, well, that's 1/3 of the circle, so that's 1/3 times pi. This time we radius is 15 squared. So we've got 1/3 times pi times 15 squared, which is 225. So then we've got 225 over 3 times pi. And if I then just simply, that gives me 75 pi. So then how many times bigger? Well, it's going to be 300 over 75, and I can simplify that by dividing both numbers by 25, in which I get 12 and I get 3, and that then becomes 4, so it's 4 times bigger. If you're wondering about where all this has come from, well, if I had pi there, and again I could cancel them down, and it then gives me my simplified fraction to 4. Question 12, it says, in a game, 2 bags A and B contain cards. Each card is marked yes or no. The table shows the number of each type of card in the bag. In the game, a player picks 1 card at random from each bag. The cards are then put back in the bag. So we've got a with replacement situation here. So looking at bag A, I've got a total of 5. And in bag B, I've got a total of 10. So yes is going to be 3 out of 5, and no is going to be 2 out of 5. Then for bag B, I've got 1 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 1 out of 10, and 9 out of 10. Then for B, it says, to win a prize, the player must pick 2 cards that marked yes, and 750 people play the game once. How many people are expected to win the prize? So let's have a look. So to win, this is for part B, we need to multiply these 2 probabilities together. So I've got 3/5 times 1/10, which is 3 over 50. I've got 450 people playing the game, so then I've just got to multiply that, and I can cancel this down. So 50 divided by that becomes 9, so I'm then looking at an answer of 27. Moving on to question 13, it says solve, and we've got 2 fractions. So here what we need to do is cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply 2w by 5 and 4 by 15. So I've got 10w equals 4 times 15, which is 60. So w equals 6. Then moving on to question 14, it says 15 workers can complete a job in 8 days. How many more workers are needed to complete the job in 6 days? So for this, what we need to do is work out the total job, and that's going to be 15 times 8. So 15 times 8, if I just do that here, I get 40, and that's going to give me 120. So we're looking at 120 days, and that's the total job. So then if I then need to complete it in 6 days, well, I then need to do 120 divided by a number equals 6. So then doing a bit of rearranging, 120 equals 6n. 120 divided by 6 gives me n, and so n equals 20. So how many more people are needed? Well, I've got 15. I need 20 workers to complete it, so I'm going to need 5 more workers. Then moving on to question 15, it says the cross section of a prism has n sides. Circle the expression for the number of faces of the prism. Now for this, if we just have a look at this, so if we had a look at the number of sides, let me just write that down. So sides, which is n. Then we've got the number of faces. So if we had 3 sides, so that's a triangular prism, and we count how many faces that's going to be. Well, it's going to be 1, 2, and then 3, so that's going to be 5. Then we look at a cuboid, or a cube, And let me draw that again because that looks absolutely nothing like a cuboid. Like so. And then count the number of faces, and that's going to have 6. Then do a pentagon one and count the number of faces that's going to have 7. And then it's just a case of looking at the link. So then how to get from this number to that number? Well, I need to add 2. So then if I've got n number of sides, I need to add 2, so that's going to be n plus 2, which is our 4th option. Question 16, circle the letter of the possible graph of y equals x cubed minus 4. So I'm looking for a cubic graph with a y-intercept of minus 4. So the 2 cubic graphs are A and D. Which of those got a y-intercept of minus 4? Well, it can only be A. Moving on to question 17, it says 75 people attend a clinic. Their ages are recorded in the community frequency diagram as drawn. And the question's asking, a nurse makes a statement about the ages of people at the clinic. He says that there's twice as many people in their 60s as in their 50s. Is he correct? So let's first of all work out how many people there are in their 50s. So in their 50s, well, 50 or less, we're looking at, what's that, 13. And in their 60 to 60, this point here is 30, so it's going to be 30 take away 13, which gives me an answer of 17. And then people in their 60s, well, from 70, less than 70 is 66. And I take that away from 30 and I get 36. So going back to the statement, there's twice as many people in their 60s as there are 50s. Yeah, I would say that's true. So yeah. And then you can just write the number of people in their 50s is 17, and the number of people in their 60s was 36. Then moving on to question 18, let me just zoom in a little bit, and it says work out the values of A, B and C. So here we're comparing the coefficients. So if I just write down 12x cubed plus 7x squared plus 3x minus 10. So what I need to do is expand this out. So I get 2ax cubed plus 2x squared plus 4x minus 10, and then minus bx, or should I say plus bx squared plus cx. So then looking at this, if I compare the coefficients, well, looking at x cubed, 2a equals 12, so a equals 6. Then looking at the coefficients of x squared, well, I've got 7 equals, and I've got 2 plus b, so b equals 5. And then looking at the coefficients of x, I've got 3 equals, and I've got 4 plus c, and so c equals minus 1, and there's my 3 values. Moving on to question 19, it says the first 3 terms of a sequence are x, y, and then x, y. The sequence is continued by multiplying the previous 2 terms. Work out the 5th term. Well, the 4th term is going to be y times xy, so that's going to be yx squared. And if I multiply this with this, I get x squared, and then I get y cubed, which is our 4th option. It then says the 8th term of the sequence is that, and the value of the term is negative. What does this mean about the values of x? Well, if this is going to be negative, well, x, it doesn't really matter whether x is positive or negative, because it's always going to give you a positive answer because you've got an even power. So this could be either. Now y, because it's got an odd power, that needs to be negative in order for the whole answer to be negative. So the ones you need to have ticked are there. Moving on to question 20, it says rearrange, and we've got this. So first of all, I want to make x the subject, So if I take x to the other side, end up with xy equals 5x plus 9. Then I want to group all my x's together, in which I get that. Then I want to factorize, and I get that. And then what I then want to do is take that bracket over to the other side, so I get x equals 9 over y minus 5, and there is my rearrangement. Then moving on to question 21, it says 5 points are connected by vectors, and it says FG is equal to 2EH. Write down FE in terms of A and B. So we want to go from F to E, and we know that F to G, which is there, is twice the size of E to H. So E to H, let's first of all work that out first. So E to H is going to be 3A plus B, because we're going with the arrow, and we're going with the arrow again up DH, which is A plus 6B. So if I simplify all of this, I get 4A plus 7B. So that's what E to H is. Now, it then says that 2 lots of E to H is, so I can write this as 4A plus 7B. Well, F to G is 2 lots of this, so that means that F to G is going to be 8A plus 14B, and that is an 8. So then from this I can then work out what F to E is, and that's going in that direction. So F to E is going to be equal to F to G, which is 8A plus 14B. And I'm going against the arrow, so minus 2A minus 15B. So that gives me 6A minus B. And there is my answer. Then moving on to question 22, it says work out, and we've got 0.68 recurring minus 0.45 recurring. I'm going to give our answer as a fraction in its simplest form. So the first one, let's convert 0.68 as a fraction. So I make it equal to x, then I multiply by 10, in which I get 6.8 recurring. I then multiply by another 10, so I get 68.8 recurring. So then if I do 100x, which is 68.8 recurring, and 10x, which is 6.8 recurring, I take the two things away, so I get 90x equals, then 68 take away 6 is 62, so x equals 62 over 90. I'm going to leave it as that for time being. Then moving on to 0.45 recurring, so for again make it equal to x, then make it multiply both by 10, then multiply by 100, and then I take those two in which I end up with 90x equals 41, so x equals 41 over 90. Now I purposely didn't simplify at that stage because now I can substitute into this. So 0.68 recurring minus 0.45 recurring is 62 over 90 minus 41 over 90. Take the two things away, so I get 21 over 90. I can then divide by 3, so it gives me 7 over 30, and that can't be simplified further, so that there is my final answer. Moving on to question 23, it says on the grid, identify the region satisfying this. We're looking at this first one. X equals 3, so that's going to be a dashed line going through there. Then y is greater than 1 is going to be there, and I'm wanting that side of the line, and for this one I'm wanting this side of the line. Then for x plus y equals 7, let's use this one. So I draw my lines there, and I want to draw a solid line going through there, so let's just do that like so. And I want below that line, let me just make that a little bit neater, like so. And so the region that I want is basically this region here. we go. Moving on to question 24, it says simplify fully. So here we need to get common denominator. So I multiply this first fraction by 4. So I get 24 over 4a minus 11 over 4a, which then gives me 13 over 4a. And there is my final answer. Then for 24, it says simplify fully. So I can simplify this first bit by taking y out. So that's going to be y minus 3. Then looking at this top fraction, let me just highlight that there. Well, that's going to be a double bracket question, so let me just put that in blue. And that's going to be y plus 7, y plus 3. And then this bit here is a difference of 2 squares. So that's y minus 3, y plus 3. And then what I then need to do is then cancel the common brackets. So if I extend this line a little bit here, and I can get rid of that minus because they're going to be joined. So I can cancel this with this, this with this. So all I'm left with is y plus 7. And I can write there's y squared plus 7y. So any of those two would be absolutely fine. Then moving on to question 25, it says here is a speed time graph for a 50-second journey. Circle the acceleration halfway through the journey. Well, halfway through the journey, we're there. And what's the acceleration? Well, it's the gradient at that particular point, and the gradient there is 0. Then says work out the total distance travelled. Well, for this I need to work out the area under the curve, in which you could break up into 3 pieces, or you can see that it is a trapezium. So here I've got A, B, and I've got H here. So A is going to be 30 plus 50 times by the height, which is 20, all divided by 2. So that then becomes 80 times 20 divided by 2, which then becomes 1600 divided by 2, so it equals 800. Then moving on to question 26, it's Zoe and Amy are playing a board game. They each have 1 disc and take turns to roll a fair die. The player moves in a clockwise direction, and the winner is the first person who lands on a home. Work out the probability that Zoe wins within her next 2 goes. So for Zoe to win, she needs to either get she can either get a 3 on her first roll, and she wins outright, or she can get a 1 and then a 2, or a 2 and then a 1. And so if I work out the probability of this is going to be a 6, this is going to be a 6 times a 6, and that's going to be a 6 times a 6. So that then equals a 6, that's 136, and that's 136. Now, it can be either of those, so I need to add those probabilities together. So it's going to be 1/6 plus 136 plus 136. If I convert this fraction to a 36, that becomes 6 over 36. No idea what I'm writing there, so let me just edit that. So we've got, I've done it again. So we've got 6 over 36 plus 1 over 36 plus 1 over 36, which is 8 over 36. And I can simplify that by dividing both numbers by 4, in which I get 2/9. Then moving on to question 27, it says the graph shows the graph of y equals f of x, and it says draw the graph of minus f of x. So for this, what we want to do is we want to reflect on the x-axis. So looking at the key points, which are these two, so if I reflect that, then that's going to end up going there. So then what it then becomes is something that looks like, and again, might just, oh, it's gone a bit wrong there. Let me just get rid of that. In which it should look something like that. Then moving on to question 28. So it says work out the value of cos 30 times cos 45 times cos 60. So for these, what you need to do is you need to know your exact values of trig. So cos 30 sine 45 and tan 60. So cos 30 is going to be root 3 over 2. Sine 45 is 1 over root 2 or 2 over root 2. So any of those. And tan 60 is root 3. So then looking at these, and you can decide whichever ones you want to go for. So I'm going to go for this, and this one. So I've got root 3 over 2 multiplied by root 2 over 2 and multiplied by root 3. I want to square all of those. So then looking at this and simplifying the fraction, well, root 3 times root 2 is root 6 times root 3 is root 18. 2 over 2 is 4. And then what we want to do then is square that. Well, 18 squared, well, root 18 squared is just going to be 18. And then that becomes 16. So then simplifying that, we get 9 over 8. And there is my final answer.